a rich man's world. I have turned the soul of this.
Hey everyone, this is Miriam Haart, and I am here with my dear friend Allison Bouganim. Allison, welcome to my podcast.
Thank you. It's so good to be here.
Hello, Faking It fam. I'm here. Allison came and joined me for the day. We've been hanging out. I'm feeling a little tipsy. That's where I'm at right now. Drank literally not even a full Aperol Spritz, but I'm gone. So if I say anything weird, just know that it's because I have been drinking. Anywho, Allison, I met when I was 16 years old in San Francisco doing Mixed School Product College, which is the program that I told you guys about in my first episode. So you can hear that to hear my story. And Allison was doing Minerva. What? No?
No.
I literally asked you if you were doing Minerva. I mentioned it earlier today.
You mentioned it, and I was like, oh, it's okay. Sorry.
You should tell me these things. Wait, so you didn't do Minerva?
I did it was a...
I thought this was like an art program with Minerva. You never did Minerva?
No.
Okay. So Allison, we were living in the same apartment building.
I was a part of a program called Uncollege, which was like an alternative education program.
Got it. Okay, so similar. Alternative education. I was doing alternative education.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that I didn't know this rounding foundational fact about you that created our friendship, but that's okay. Semantics, yeah. And so we met in San Francisco and we lived in the same dorm, and you were doing super cool design stuff. So much to talk about there.
Yeah.
I was doing my app development thing, but I wanted to bring you onto my podcast to talk about just the incredible person that you are, because there's so many sides of who you are. I feel like there's no way to put you in any box, and I feel like you've lived your life outside of any box, period, anyways, and that's why it's so hard to describe who you are. And so I would love if you can just tell the listeners, my Faking It fam, a little bit about who you are, where you came from, and how that informed the person you are today.
Yeah, small questions. We love it. Just like go into it.
Yeah.
I'm Allison Bouganim. I grew up, I'm the oldest of a set of triplets, and I grew up in Miami, Florida. And I went to art and design school in Miami. At the age of 13, I enrolled in college, like did dual enrollment with my high school. And I focused in on industrial design. And so by the time I graduated high school, I had 3 years worth of college level industrial design courses and fine art courses.
So cool.
When I was 15, I started a business. When I was 17, I started a nonprofit organization. And then when I was 16, I started a nonprofit. When I was 17, I graduated high school. And at that time, my parents were willing to pay for college, but again, I'm a triplet, and they were like, you have to stay in Florida, and I was like, absolutely not, thank you, but no thank you.
Right.
And that's when I decided to enroll in Uncollege, or like do this program called Uncollege, and then that's how I went to San Francisco and met you.
Cool. And can you talk about a little bit of what it was like growing up in Miami? And I know that you're an artist and a designer, and how that informed what you created too, and why?
Totally. So growing up in Miami, the kind of sexualization of women was very prominent. I remember the first time that I was catcalled was when I was 9 years old.
Wow.
And so like those kind of themes, just progressed throughout my life, and to a point where I thought that it was like normal behavior. Yeah. But at the same time that I was coming to terms with kind of women's value and my value in the world, and like how I can take up space and like what that looks like for me, I was always also confronted with the fact that going to school, I took the public bus, and I passed like six or seven strip clubs just to get there. And, messages on like what a woman needs to look like to be beautiful. Her beauty is her value. It's, it's Miami in the early 2000s. It's very kind of similar to what it is today, maybe, like kind of like vapid or like very kind of toxic.
Your
around,
value
like,
is based on your appearance.
Absolutely. Yeah. My value, absolutely. All women's value was based on their appearance and what they looked like. And that's kind of where they gained their power as well, and their respect from others.
Right. Would you say power from others and power from themselves? Or like, is that how they felt themselves? Like their self-value is taken from looks? Or
I mean, it could be. I think that's like a main factor. I mean, it's hard to say how other people like internalize value, but I know for myself where I ranked lowest in like my self-esteem came from my appearance, as well as my appearance being like a main kind of inspiration for my harassment, which is like a really interesting dichotomy, like just just existing and having a pulse and a vagina and like walking down the street, like guaranteed harassment from strange men.
Yeah.
While also I was receiving messages that I wasn't physically attractive enough and I needed to look differently. And so like the kind of power of, it was kind of just like the power dynamic that most young girls feel in Miami. It's like you're hot enough to be a sexualized object for men walking down the street, but you're not hot enough for anything else. And like the messages that you're receiving from media is that you have to look a certain way, and of course you're not beautiful enough, so like feed into this kind of messaging of buy this thing and be beautiful, and like you know, like there's like a whole like feminine economy in Miami that is solely focused on like physical appearance and the exploitation of women's physical appearance to make more money, usually for men. And so while I was in Miami and growing up, I was trying to come to terms with these messages, and through that kind of journey, I ended up creating a series of interactive art sculptures called Wax That Ass. And that was kind of my first introduction to you as well. Like when I was living in San Francisco, I started the series in Miami. And essentially the series is a series of interactive arts, like interactive butt sculptures molded from actual women's butts. And meaning that women would volunteer for this project and essentially like bend over in like a very vulnerable kind of position, and I would put a plaster cast on their butts, and they'd have to like be bending over for like 30 minutes at a time, which is incredible that anybody volunteered to do this, you know. And so once the initial cast was formed, it was a hollowed out sculpture. I then took it back to my art studio, aka my bedroom, and like finished up these sculptures. And since they were hollowed out, and then I coated the sculptures with wax, which is also a double entendre of Wax That Ass is also like a male like ejaculating on a woman's butt, you know? And so material wise, it was made out of wax, and also that kind of dual meaning. And then these sculptures were hollowed out, and so I learned how to use, the first thing that I used with tech was a makey, which is like a microcomputer. I don't really know how to explain it, but it's like very like user friendly, and essentially I programmed different buttons and sensors on the sculptures that once you trigger a certain sensor, an audio recording is released, and it's a recording of the woman in her voice sharing her experiences of sexual harassment and assault. And so in addition to this photo series, or in addition to the sculpture series that I had in Miami, I also went around Miami and took photos of these sculptures in public as a part of a series of guerrilla style art installations, site-specific installations, specifically where these women have personally been harassed. And so these were in locations in front of a church, at a school, in a playground, on top of a cop car, anything that you could think of that was kind of just like everyday blatant harassment that happens in public. And then when I moved to San Francisco, I extended the series as well. I created entirely new sculptures with new women. These women, most of them identified as, or most of them were rape survivors, and were sharing their experiences of rape and assault. And the locations where those sculptures, San Francisco being San Francisco, had like a very tech focus. So there was a photo obviously in front of Civic Center, which is like kind of like, we understand what that is symbolic of, but there was also photos in front of Google, in front of Uber at the Stanford campus where Brock Turner raped
Chanel Miller.
Chanel Miller, exactly, behind the frat house. And so all of these locations around the Bay Area as kind of like public interventions, and while these sculptures were placed around the city, people stopped what they were doing and they came over and touched these sculptures and interacted. And that was the entire point of the series, because it was to have these sculptures share a message, but in a way that not only told their stories, but done so in a way that could not be ignored. You were physically like kind of confronted with these images, with these large scale installations everywhere you went in the city. And they were representing where these women have personally been harassed.
And I think what's so cool about this piece of art that you created is that it wasn't just something that you saw, it wasn't just something that you felt, but it was also something that you heard. You know, you added all these different senses into the experience of these women in all these different locations, which is so cool. And also you channeled your frustration with growing up in the city, that oppress you and put you down for being too pretty and for being too ugly and for all these different feelings into an actual piece of art that was interactable, that invoked emotion and understanding and noise into an area that isn't normally noisy.
Totally.
You know, which is so beautiful.
Yeah.
And actually, fun fact is that this Wax That Ass series, for me, played a huge role in my life. And I think I may have said this to you, but I don't know. I'll say it again, just in case.
Yeah.
Do tell. So when I was living in Redwood City, doing my internship at as a data science intern at the AI company, and you were living in San Francisco, I think I was 18 years old or 17 or something. And you called me and asking my help to add the Twitter hashtags. So anytime that a button was pressed, it would tweet #WaxThatAss, and the person would record something, or
it was actually,
what was it?
Anytime somebody tweeted anything on Twitter and then ended it with the #WaxThatAss, the text to voice would work,
right?
And then the sculpture would say whatever audio had it ending with #WaxThatAss.
Mm-hmm. And so that was a hard thing to do.
Yeah,
and you're I don't know how to fucking do this.
You saved the day with that one.
And so then, and then you're can you help me with this? And I was like, yes, I'm an engineer. I can fucking help you with this. I can do that. And so then I came over, I literally took an Uber or something to San Francisco, came out of my bubble of being in Redwood City, which is, there's nothing. If people don't know where Redwood City is, it's
I don't even know where Redwood City is.
It's the heart of Silicon Valley, and it's all these boys in sweatshirts walking around drinking boba. That's what they do. It's terrible. There's no real social life there. And so bringing me out into San Francisco was, one, a good thing for my mental health. Thank you. And then two is that when we were doing that, we found out that there was the launch day at Make School happening. Wow. And Make School is a school that I went to that was the computer science school, and we decided to go because we knew a lot of the people there. And then by going there, I met the Stanford professor that really launched my ability of getting into Stanford, and that connection that I made the biggest difference in my life. It helped me get into the university that I'm in today, and that was because you pulled me out into San Francisco, and we decided to spontaneously go to the launch day at Make School. So thank you for that.
When women help other women, magic happens,
Literally. That's a theme, I would say, of the summer for me this past summer, is just genuinely feeling a sisterhood. I've really felt, I've had so many meetings with different people, and I just felt the true genuity of women wanting to help other women, and just genuinely wanting to uplift each other.
Yeah.
And I think something about being a woman is that you constantly have to decide to go against a certain norm or go with a certain norm as it fits into who you are. And I think something that's so cool about you is that you constantly are just going against norms and just living your most authentic self and doing you. And I know you've been traveling a lot and, going out to eat by yourself and all these different experiences. And I was wondering if you can tell the listeners a little bit about that experience and what it's like to just go out on the world on your own, and how long you've been doing that.
Oh, I'm fully embracing date yourself summer, winter, fall, spring, mm-hmm. So I was just traveling. I just came back to the United States actually after quitting my job that I worked in for 5.5 years.
Yeah.
And I was you know what, I'm burnt out. I want to travel. Life's too short, I'm too young, blah, 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 whatever. And so
I'm just going to pause this and just tell everybody that you literally went from high school to this program, this uncollege program, and then got a full-time design job at the best design consultancy in the world, literally one of the best, right? And you worked there for 5.5 years. That's amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, continue.
It was definitely a combination of working hard, but then also so lucky, to your point of meeting the people that change your life, just looking for mentors in places that, if you have power and you can lift other people up, fully please do that. But yeah, so I went straight from high school to this job, did this amazing job for 5.5 years, and just decided that right now, this is not what I want to be focusing on, but mm-hmm. It's a great company. And then, and then I quit my job and just traveled the world. And so I went to, I'm trying to count now.
I'm totally going to keep this soundbite in of you just tapping.
Just tapping, trying to count.
I'm totally going to keep that in.
I went to 12 places, 9 different countries.
Wow.
So I went back to a few countries in this mix. And so, yeah, and I did this completely solo. With the exception of going to Morocco. I crashed a friend's trip who was also going, and I was like, I'm coming with you. Right. But other than that, I went to all these countries just traveling solo with kind of just like the expectation of like being curious about myself and like listening. This was a completely new experience, like not having a job and just being able to like have all the free time I want to do whatever I want and just being really intentional with that time. Because I know it's so rare and like we'll probably get the ending soon if I can't get it, And so really, really incredible time. I went to just Michelin star restaurants, just taking myself out to 3-course meals, just like my favorite thing to do in the entire world is like try new cuisine. And at first I was like, I'm not traveling with anybody. I can't just like go to restaurants and like order whatever I want. And then like, who's going to eat this food? Like, and then I got over it. And so I would like in Florence, I remember I had some of the best meals I've ever had in my entire life. Just like 3-course, like little appetizer moment over here, 2 glasses of wine, why not? Just like a full-on pasta dish, maybe some dessert, and just like fully like just like living my best life and just eating whatever I wanted to and just really just like being just like taking myself on dates and just at one point I like sent a photo of my meal to my mom and I was like, I'm gonna be single forever because no one like I'm not gonna be able to just accept like the bare minimum anymore. Like if you want to date me, you have to like
date me better than I date myself.
Totally, exactly, literally. Date me better than I date myself. That's my new like life motto. Okay, so like, and that's so amazing. Like, and so I'm still doing that. But yeah, what a journey.
So I feel like dating yourself is the supreme level of self-love. Totally. Because you can't really date anybody unless one, you love yourself. You have to be secure with yourself. And so here you are legitimately dating yourself. And I feel like there's so many people, especially women, who feel so uncomfortable to go out to a party on their own, let alone go to a restaurant by themselves. Yeah. So how did you get to this point? Like, were you always like this, or what allowed you to feel comfortable with just going on solo trips?
I think that the thing that switched inside of me was like, I don't want to wait anymore. Like, I know so many incredible people who like just like stop their lives waiting for other people to go with them so they feel more comfortable and safer. Yeah. And I was just over it. There was just a moment where I woke up and I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to keep waiting. Like, there's never going to be the right time to be uncomfortable. Yeah. So might as well just like do it while you're eating pasta in Italy,
Right. And I think that's really interesting what you said about like waiting anymore, because I feel like that can apply to so many aspects of our lives in terms of I'm waiting until I can fit into this outfit to wear it, or I'm waiting until like I have a certain body size or a certain salary or a certain something that's preventing especially women from like moving forward, and I think the body aspect of things too is like so common. Like, I'm waiting till I'm more beautiful to go on dates. Totally. And whatever they define as beauty. And speaking of, I'm curious about what your next step is and what you're planning on doing now, because I think that ties in a little bit with this topic.
Totally. Well, it's so funny because I'm now a signed model. I'm a plus size model in LA, and I actually got the contract for my modeling contract 2 years before I signed it. Right. Because I wasn't ready. I had all these expectations of, oh well, I should lose weight before I sign it. Or I need to be more financially stable before I sign it. Or I need to get this removed before I, like, whatever it was, like body image or anything else, any other fake criteria that I put in my way. I was like, I need to do all these things. And then it came to a point where I was like, I think I was just like talking to you actually, and you were like, fuck it, just sign it. Like, just do it. You're like, what are you waiting on? And it's like, what am I waiting on? You know, like I had this like limiting belief that I had to like choose one or the other, or like think like I had to sacrifice a few things to get what I wanted. And I realized that like, that's something that I believe. And it's like, if I believe it, it's true, but like I can have it all. And like, how can I start creating my life in a way where I can do everything that I want to, where nothing is actually limiting me unless it really is. But, it's just like making the decision.
Right. And I think like a lot of the times people are searching for a reason to do something. And it's like, okay, I want to do this, but let me find a person to do it with. Let me find this to do it with, or like something like that. But I think there's a beauty in just why not?
Why not?
Like, that's a mentality in itself. It's like the why not mindset.
Yeah.
You know, like, if you have this opportunity presented to you, then fucking go for it. If you don't have a reason to do it, that's not a reason to not do it.
Totally.
And I think that's like a beauty in just like taking the next step, is just deciding like, why not?
Why not?
Why not? Let's just go for it. And that's really a mindset to just learn anything new, do anything new, and just really live in the moment. I feel like this like why not mentality.
Yeah.
And so you definitely embrace the why not mentality. And I guess that was a learning experience too. But what is it like now to doing this modeling stuff? Like, how is that coming from Miami? I'm sure maybe that's like impacted your decision to do this, like the beauty side of things, or like, what is it like for you?
Yeah, well, it's really interesting because growing up in Miami and then also creating these sculptures and just being like a feminist and you know, whatever that comes with, like, I was very anti the modeling industry. It was an industry that was incredibly toxic to me and something that was incredibly like harmful to my self-esteem and to all of the ways that I view myself and even some of the ways that I like negatively viewed other women because I was taught that we were in competition with each other, which, you know, I've had to unlearn. And so coming from Miami and never feeling beautiful enough, never feeling represented in the media that I was consuming, or never feeling like I fit into like a beauty norm, you know, and then making the decision throughout my life and like turning around and saying, you know, actually, like, if I don't feel represented in this space, like, I can represent myself, and I'll be there for the middle school Allison that really hated her body and the way that she looked and never felt beautiful enough. And so like really just like trying to be the shift in the industry and like, you know, just changing what that looked like for me and being there for hopefully other women that feel this way and who can look at me as a size 12, 14 beautiful woman.
Yes.
And say, you know what, like, she's beautiful, I'm beautiful, you know, your body size, your height, your weight, the way you look, the way, you know, media has told you that beauty is, like, that doesn't define what you look like. Yeah. And just like saying why not, just saying fuck it, you know, and just like really trying to like, you know, fuck shit up and like change the industry for the better, because it's not going to change on its own. Yeah.
And that's really awesome. And I think you're right. I think even like my mom, she tried to do that too. Yeah. By like trying to create, like, have models own their own businesses and be financially independent. And by you being in the space is so huge. Like, it's really so huge to have a feminist representing different body sizes that like knows themselves. Like, and you're even you have your own company, and just doing all of that is so empowering to so many people. And so like, thank you for doing that and for putting in that work. And I know also, last thing I want to talk to you about is that I know you put a lot of work into some of the design work that you've been doing. And do you want to talk a little bit about what that was exactly when you were working at Fjord, the kind of research that you did? Yeah. And you got a master's in Stockholm.
Yeah.
Too, right?
Didn't go to college, but have a master's degree. Yes. You know, I skipped a few steps and, you know, it's all in the power of a good story. But
and this ties so well into what this podcast is, of just like faking it. Yeah. Because your life is the representation. Literally.
I mean, when I started working at this design company, during the day, I would just try to be as helpful as I can, and like whatever anybody needed, I would be there to support. And they started to give me more work. And so during the day, I'd say, yes, I can do this thing, this prototype. Yes, I can, whatever they asked me. And then at night, I'd go home and I'd Google, what the fuck is a prototype? Yes. Or like, what is a high fidelity this? Like, how do I make something clickable? Like, what does that even mean? And so like, literally just like the epitome of fake it till you make it. And like, just trying to be helpful. Yeah. But also just like, I am the number one student of Google University, you know, YouTube University, like whatever it is.
I have a question for you on that, actually. So I do the same thing. I always say yes to more than I have ever done. But I know that I'm capable of whatever I'm saying yes to. And then therefore I say yes, and then I get the shit done, and then it moves forward. For you, how do you know, and I think for the follower, like the listeners too, it'd be interesting to hear, how do you know when to say yes to work you haven't ever done before, and when to say no if it's actually something out like of your capacity? Have you ever said no to something, or like when do you know? to say yes or no?
I say no very rarely.
All right.
So cool. I if it's something that's like terrifying to me, that's something that's like so out of my comfort zone that I've never done before, I ask myself if it aligns to my values.
Okay.
And if it's something that I would like to be doing, but I just don't know how to yet.
Yeah.
And if it is something that aligns to like where I want to put intention towards, I can figure it out.
Okay.
But if it's something that's like, it's irrelevant to what I'm doing and it's just like adding more like busy work to my plate and it's like not beneficial for either party, then then maybe no.
Okay.
But I do believe that I think it's just a growth mindset. And like, I think that I can learn anything. And like, you know, I think that I can figure out anything. And also I listened to, I was just like scrolling Instagram, I think a few days ago. Mm-hmm. And I saw one of those like affirmation posts that was like, you know, if you weren't ready for the opportunity, you wouldn't have gotten it or something like that. And I think that's like, that hit me really hard because I keep like, there's always, again, like these obstacles of like, oh, I shouldn't do this. All of these like kind of barriers that we place in front of ourselves as to why we shouldn't do something. Mm-hmm. But I think that if you got this opportunity, you can say yes to it and you can make it work. Yeah.
And I think it's really, at the end of the day, what like you're saying, it's about the belief in yourself. You believe that you will, no matter what situation you're in, you will be okay in that situation. And I think that ties into you traveling by yourself.
Totally.
And just quitting a job because you know you'll be okay. You'll find another job if you need to. And just that's what allows you to live your life authentically, is just the trust and love that you have for yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that's really beautiful. And I hope other people can feel that way too. And so really quickly, do you want to say what it is that you did at the design school? And
so I focused on something called systemic design.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm working on now. It's a part of my company called Systemic by Design. And so basically systemic design, in the way that I'm looking at it, is kind of in like a socio-technical like setting. So like socio-technical meaning like the relationship between humans and technology, humans and systems. Okay. So like the healthcare system, for example, the justice system, kind of like those like larger kind of like community systems that we kind of live in and interact with on a daily basis. And so there's something in the systemic design kind of like framework, which is called the iceberg model, where it's like top of the iceberg is like an event that has happened that everybody can see, and you dig deeper into the iceberg model and you get like a deeper layer of like, okay, this is just like what happened, but this is actually what's happening. And then you go deeper into like events and you get all the way down to mental models. And so mental models is where I'm really interested in right now, of like shifting mental models within the modeling industry, shifting mental models within design. And like, if you built something using the frameworks of misogyny and using capitalism and using racism to build the foundation of what you're building, you're going to look at a bunch of the top of the iceberg. You're going to look at all of these events that are happening. And you're like, how did that happen? That's crazy. We don't understand. But you have to dig deeper and understand, actually, like, this entire, like, this is racist. Like, this entire thing that you've built your entire company on, that you've built this government policy on, like, was built on like something that is inherently wrong and unethical. And unless we identify the root cause of the problems, we're never going to solve it for a collective amount of people. And so it's about going into companies, going into government organizations, going into a bunch of these other socio-technical systems that I mentioned before, and understanding the root causes of problems so we can hopefully like create interventions to shifting those mental models.
Wow, that's fucking amazing. And you wrote the guide on how to do this, or kind of like the research on like that this is important?
Yeah, I contributed to the field of research. So this is like still emerging right now, but that's what I studied in grad school. That's what I wrote my thesis on. Cool. That's what I'm really focusing on right now. I wrote like a guidebook on how to like implement kind of these practices and principles into organizations. So cool. And that's what I was working on at the other company. I was the North American lead for the systemic design community of practice, working with other leaders within Latin America and Asia and Europe, etc., to kind of build out this practice and try to implement it within other design studios.
Very cool. So everyone, as you can hear, Allison is this badass maker and she's doing incredible things. And if you want to continue following her journey, where should people follow you, read your papers? How can they access you and follow your journey for the future?
You can follow me on Instagram at Allison Bouganim. The same kind of handle goes for TikTok and Medium and YouTube.
You want to spell Bouganim for
Yeah. What? Not everybody. Yeah, it's Allison. So Allison.
Yeah.
And then Bouganim, B as in boy, Ouganim.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on my podcast.
Thank you for having me. This has been amazing.
It's been incredible. All right. Bye, y'all.
Bye.
So I hope you enjoyed my incredible conversation with Allison. As you can see, she is a woman of many trades, an incredible designer, an incredible thinker, a beautiful person who does things without knowing whether or not she can do them because she genuinely believes in herself. And that is what this podcast is about. That's why it's called Faking It. It's about fake it till you make it, and just believing in yourself and doing the things that you know you can do without having even done them yet. So I hope that you're excited for more episodes to come. I'm talking to so many cool CEOs coming up. I'm really excited for you to hear these conversations that I'm having. Make sure to follow me on Instagram at @thisisfakingit. My personal is at Miriam Haart. Follow me on YouTube. Subscribe to all my channels. I'm on all the different channels, TikTok, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, everything. Make sure to check me out and leave your feedback. We're doing this together. I'm excited for the episodes to come. Kisses, bitches.